Well, welcome to our Sunday afternoon gathering, this time of coming together with open hearts and minds to the potential that we are being expressed as we learn and grow and live and share. So it's wonderful to share this afternoon with you. You've got a lovely view of the garden. Gradually spring is coming and the daffodils are starting to show their faces, so it's really nice to be able to be with you in this place. So we will light the Christ candle and use the candle lighting as a moment to get focused and still, bringing our attention to this moment. And knowing that the light that the candle represents is the light that's within all of us, that we call on, that we recognise, that we step into this afternoon. And know that this light is the commonality between all of us. We all have this light within us. So we take a moment just to get present, to feel a sense of gratitude and anticipation of what this afternoon means for each of us, why we are here. And know that together we make this happen. And that is good. Continuing this wonderful, gentle, loving energy, let's speak the words of the opening invocation in the program together. I am now in the presence of pure being, immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love and wisdom. I acknowledge thy presence and thy power, O blessed Spirit. In thy divine wisdom, now erase my mortal limitations, and from thy pure substance of love, bring into manifestation my world according to thy perfect law. And let's just take a few more minutes to know this together. Invoking, calling forth from within us and around us the presence of the Lord. A presence of life, love and wisdom, in which we live and move and breathe. And know that this moves in and through us, is the truth of us.
So our word for today is insight. And the affirmation, I trust in my spiritual insight, and I am at peace. Should we say that together? I trust in my spiritual insight, and I am at peace. Experience can guide me as I deal with any challenges in life. I appreciate acquired skills and the many ways in which they serve me. Still, at times, a new perspective is needed to take a fresh look for any missed opportunities or solutions. So I learn to rely on my indwelling spiritual insight, my Christ expression, to guide me to the most effective choices I can make. In experiencing oneness with God as source, any fears and challenges of the world are dissolved and alleviated. I am able to find both courage and peace. No proof is needed, or even possible, for my spiritual insight. I simply trust, and I am at peace. And the Bible quotation from John 16. When the Spirit of truth comes, it will guide you into all the truth. For he will not speak on his own, but will speak whatever he hears. And he will declare to you the things that are to come. That is quite a difficult passage, actually, but I'm just, I think, pointing to, when we have that inner knowing, it's come from somewhere else, not from our own thinking and reasoning, which we also use, was talked about in the first paragraph. So, our opportunity and our, I hope, desire as well as goal is to connect to that spirit of truth within each one of us and between us. So just spend a few moments reflecting. So if you'd like to put your things down, just for a few moments. And the thought is about insight. I trust in my spiritual insight and I am at peace. I'm sure you've had times of when you have known what the Spirit was guiding you to do and you felt at peace. So spend a few moments now just reflecting maybe on a time when you knew you had insight. A time to know also that it is in the stillness that we can experience insight.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. The
Good afternoon, everybody. Okay. When Kimmery asked me to speak today, I couldn't initially think of anything I specifically wanted to speak about. So what I thought I would do is simply pick up on Daily Word and take my interpretation of what Daily Word means. And Isabel talked very much about the insight side of it. I would like to talk very much about the trust side of it, because I think we can get insights, but I don't know what you're like. When I get insights, I frequently don't do anything with them. And I think it requires that trust to take it forward. So as I started reading this, it was when I started looking into this, it was simply something to talk about. But actually I found, and I think it's often said that we teach what we need to learn. I found that this meant a great deal to me, and in the last sort of few days looking at this, I've learned a lot about myself, so it's actually been very valuable. So to use these insights, we need courage. And courage is a difficult thing to muster sometimes. And it's that courage to trust in God. And I was reading Jim Rosemergy recently, because I had a talk yesterday about Birmingham about mysticism. So I reread Jim's book, Even Mystics Have Bills to Pay. And he looks upon God as source, perfectly reasonable. And actually, when we're thinking about insights, that's absolutely what it is. It's the source from which these messages flow. But the supply, and the difference between source and supply being source is a potential, supply is actually using it. Supply is the consciousness of God. We've actually got to bring it into our consciousness. And that's the substance that the Fillmores often used to talk about, the substance which underpins everything we do. And it's always there. It is always there. It's up to us to have the courage, the trust to do something about it. And what does Daily Word offer us? Well, first of all, it talks about experience. Yeah, we can build on our experience. And we can get so far. We can get quite a long way. Some people get their whole lives without really going any further than that. But then it talks about this indwelling spiritual insight, the Christ expression, to guide me to the most effective choices I can make, experiencing oneness. Fears and challenges of the world are dissolved and alleviated. What a promise. I am able to find both courage and peace. I simply trust and I am at peace. Jim at Rosemergy talks about peace as lacking want, because there is enough in the world. And we learn this time and time again, there always is enough, but we have to trust in it. And it says, simply trust. Well, I don't know about you, I mean, it sounds very easy, doesn't it? Simply trust, but this doesn't sound terribly easy. I'm a Capricorn. I'm an engineer by profession. I've always trusted me. And in some ways, and we'll come back to this in a moment, in some ways that's worked. It's got me so far in life. It's done some things I look upon as good, but it actually falls woefully short as well. So trusting in me hasn't got me all the way there. And how does the Bible reading help us? Well, the Bible reading comes from John. As we know, John is a very mystical, even metaphysical gospel as compared to the three synoptic gospels. And this bit is actually from his final discourse. This is the last conversation he was having with his apostles before he went on the final leg of his journey. And he'd been talking about things like the vine, with him being the vine, God being the vine grower, and the apostles and everyone else being the branches. So he was putting over the message of oneness. He was trying to leave them with this real message of oneness. But then he went on to say things like, if the world hates you, be aware that it hated me before it hated you, that you'll get thrown out of the synagogue. But then he goes on to talk about something called the Paraclete. Now, the Paraclete isn't some bracket on a boat for hanging your parrot off. It's generally interpreted, and some of these words came up, advocate, comforter, Holy Spirit. That's a pretty powerful message, isn't it? That he was leaving the apostles with something that would comfort them, that would advocate for them, would be there for them when they needed it. That's a very powerful message. But how do you get to trust in that? If you go back to the days when they were living, then Jesus, as you know, his mission was generally around the villages. He didn't spend much time in the cities until the end. And they lived in kind of a theocracy where religion was accepted as being a normal part of life. So everything he was saying to them, they would have taken as gospel. They would have believed it. They would have taken it on board. And of course, they had him with them. So when he went and he left this Holy Spirit with them, there was a good reason why they would trust it. There was a sort of a continuity there. But then we're asked to trust it. Look how our world differs. We're materialistic. We are looking for scientific proofs from things. Ever since the Greeks, God bless them, introduced the whole idea of a scientific approach, we've been looking for proof that these things exist. So where do we get the proof from? Well, proof to me comes from faith. Faith is the thing that allows us to produce our world. But what do we have faith in? You know, Jim Rosemergy's book talks about a lot of people have things like faith in pensions. I had faith in pensions. I think it did a pretty good job, really. I've got 2 very good final salary pension schemes, where, quite comfortable, thank you much, materially. But where's that left me in terms of the bigger picture, in terms of something to take forward in life? You kind of get to the point where you've achieved those things you set off to do because you believed in those things, and then you're left with a bit of a gap. Where'd you go next? And that for me is where this faith in God comes in. And there's a choice here. Everything is a choice. Unity talks about 3 levels of consciousness. There's the conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious. Superconscious being our connection with God, the thing we should be having this trust in, the things that brings us all together, the things that produces this sense of oneness. But it's our subconscious, which is the construction of all our beliefs, all of our experiences, everything that's built up, the sort of the core inner part of who we are, that actually generates our world. And we get in this almost sort of paradoxical situation where it's in the conscious mind, the thing that we are using here today, me talking, you hopefully listening, that is actually where we live our lives. And we have to make the conscious choice, either to put our faith and trust in God or put our faith and trust in more materialistic things. It's our choice. And it's interesting that Course in Miracles talks about there effectively being no choice. It is a required course. So there's kind of a junction here. It's probably grayer than this, but we can either choose to put our faith in God or not. And if not, we will be given the chance to do it again. It will always come back. It's never an end of the road. It may not even be in this lifetime, who knows, but the choice will always come back again. And we can choose to put our faith in God and get the benefit that comes from that and to have that trust. And there's an interesting story in Acts 5 between Ananias and Sapphira. At the time, the disciples were asking people that sort of joined this new society, this new grouping, to put all their money, all their commitment into working as this group. And Ananias and Sapphira decided not to. They held some back. Now in the story they both died, and I don't think that means that they literally died in a physical sense, but it probably means they died to an extent internally, because even when we have that faith and we have that trust, there has to be the commitment that goes with it. And this, for me, has always been the really hard part. How do you take something fairly esoteric and actually put your faith and your trust in it to the extent that you are really committed? it takes a lot of guts, it takes a lot of courage. And so it comes back to the point I made easier. You know, Daily Word said, you simply have to do this. Simply have to do it. It's not easy. It really is. I have not found it easy. I have found, though, over the last few years, since Kimmy and I first came to Unity, which was 15 and a half years ago, that my journey has started taking me more and more in that line. I've started a more rigorous meditation practice, which gets me into this feeling of oneness and this feeling of trust. So I've found that by gradually chipping away at it, I start getting there. But it's interesting, I think it's Doreen once said that you're only ever halfway there. And you know that's right, because the more you get down the road of the journey, the bigger the journey opens up in front of you, the more potential you can see, which I think in itself is goodness. Because actually, I guess it would be something of a disappointment if you actually got to the end of the journey. I mean, what would you do then? So to me, this comes back to how do we do this? How do we get these benefits? How do we really get to trust and get the benefits that are being talked about in Daily Word? To me, it comes down to an old saying, suck it and see. Try it. Try it, see the benefit, and then it will expand more. To me, it's like an expanding spiral. You start with a small trust and a growth, and slowly it works up and out and becomes more and more embracing. But interestingly, going back to that model of consciousness, all we're really doing is getting back in touch with ourselves, because we never left the place where this existed. We're still there. So actually, this is more about discovering the power within us, which is a phrase you all have heard from a very famous book, but then that's a story for another day.
You know, I was thinking as you were saying all that you did, Paul, a few things came to my mind. I read, I think it must have been in the Lent booklet, Paul Hasselback spoke, you know the expression, fake it until you make it. He wrote, faith it until you make it. And I like that, because fake it until you make it sounds a bit like, I don't know, really negative or hard work or something, but faith it until you make it. So just keep doing it and keep, like you're saying, chipping away. It does manifest, it does come through us. We just have to kind of keep going. And the other thing that I thought was, I had an expression that said, the hands of God are at the end of our arms. And, you know, this is the hand of God, and you've got the hand of God. You know, we are all the hands of God, and we know God because we act that way. God is love, and we act as love, and God is light, and we act with light. So that's how we know God is real, because we live it ourselves, and we share it with everybody. And that way, it will just grow and grow and become manifest. And I think that's what we're here to do. So, there we are. So thank you very much, Paul. That was great. It was great to take a daily word and just go into that in a bit more detail and focus on that. And thank you, Isabel, for doing the reading. The greatest thing in all my life is knowing you. The greatest thing in all my life is knowing you. I want to know you more. I want to know you more. The greatest thing in all my life is knowing you. It's so lovely having you back and playing the piano, Dorothy. It's really nice. It's lovely. And to have Gil and to have all of you present. It kind of makes the Saturday for me when you all show up and we share in this together. It really is giving is receiving. So let's just take a moment to close our eyes and say thank you. Thank you, God, for all that we have received, all that's been given, all that we take away, and know that we are changed, if even just a little bit wiser, a little bit more singing. A little more sprightly in our step when we leave the room. I know that a little bit more of God is coming through, and our faith is deepened. We have more courage, we can be who we came here to be, for we walk, we live in the light of God. Amen. So let's say the prayer for protection together. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Amen. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be, with God as Creator, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take,